Did you know that requiring somebody to have an ID is racist? I'm not kidding. I know it sounds nuts. So I want to start this off by having the legal genius over at The View explain what I'm talking about so that I don't mislead you on it. Take a listen.
People don't have cars, don't have driver's licenses. So it's sort of a vestige of, I think, post-slavery laws where black people had to prove their right to vote, and oftentimes they couldn't vote because they couldn't pass some crazy test or they didn't have the appropriate ID. It also affects women that are married. Maybe your passport reflects something that's different on your birth certificate or on your driver's license. So really, the bottom line is voter suppression, and I agree with him 100%. It's a brilliant notion that less voter ID laws allows more people to vote. And most democracies do it that way. We're the only ones that really don't do it that way.
Yeah, that's Sunny Hostin. Yeah, she's not exactly the legal genius I described, but you get my point. She actually has a law degree and she likes bragging about that. But I don't even know where to start with this one. So let's start with the last thing she said about the number of countries and take a look. I mean, look at all these countries that are racist. Wow. Did you know that? All of these countries who require voter ID to vote with an ID are apparently racist. On that chart, I think I'm looking at like 72 countries that all require voter ID. So now let's break down another thing that you talk about, women who get married. So, I mean, look, most of the women that I know are really smart, intelligent. They all know how to deal with this when they get married to change their name. Some of them do, some of them don't. But she claims that somehow this is some huge burden to change their name. My wife didn't do, I mean, she did it and it wasn't that big of a deal for her. I know thousands, probably millions of people have done it in the past. Why does she somehow think women can't do this? Maybe it's because Democrats in general think about voter ID as a pejorative, something that holds people down. Take a listen.
It disproportionately affects young people who trend more progressive on average, and it disproportionately affects poor people, and it disproportionately affects people of color to not be able to exercise their constitutional right to vote.
Ms. Johnson, you just insulted the young, the poor, the rural, and people of color by insinuating that they don't have enough wherewithal to go get a photo ID or a driver's license. Ridiculous.
All right, so let's just cut it all out and get to the heart of this, because what's this really about? According to some of these people, it's really about minorities, Black Americans to be specific, that they just can't possibly know how to get an ID. They don't know how to go to the DMV. Most of them probably couldn't drive, according to these folks, right? Just how insulting is that? I mean, it's literally insulting. You want to talk about racism? The idea that you can go around and sling a slur like that, oh, minorities don't know how to get an ID. It's challenging for them. That's insane. This is Merrick Garland talking about how discriminatory it is to have people have a voter ID, especially for those people of color who find it so challenging. Take a look.
The right to vote is still under attack. And that is why the Justice Department is fighting back. That is why one of the first things I did when I came into office was to double the size of the voting section of the Civil Rights Division. That is why we are challenging efforts by states and jurisdictions to implement discriminatory, burdensome, and unnecessary restrictions on access to the ballot, including those related to mail-in voting, the use of drop boxes, and voter ID requirements. That is why we are working to block the adoption of discriminatory redistricting plans that dilute the vote of Black voters and other voters of color.
Just remember, not only was he the Attorney General under Biden, Obama wanted to put him on the Supreme Court. Holy smokes, can you imagine that? That guy on the Supreme Court, and that's what he thinks? Do you have any idea how insulting all of this is? Whether it's women or Black Americans, it's so racist. What they're saying is the racist thing, that Blacks and other people of color and women they can't possibly know how to go to the DMV or to the passport office to get an ID. I mean, think about it. Real ID, by the way, comes into effect in just a few weeks. Real ID. You won't be able to get on a plane if you don't do this. And somehow no one seems to think that that's racist, do they? There's a clip that I wanted to show you where people are being asked just in the streets of New York if they're able to go to the DMV. Take a look.
Do you have ID normally? You carry ID around?
Yes, I have state ID.
Do you carry ID?
Yes, I do.
Do you know any black person who doesn't carry ID?
No. Everyone that I know has an ID. Why would they think we don't have ID?
That's a lie. Why would they say that?
Do you have ID?
Yes.
Because I have my ID and my friends have their ID, so like, we know what we need to carry around.
Everybody that I know have ID. Like, that's one of the things you need to walk around with New York with, ID.
Do you know any black adult who does not have ID?
No, I don't.
Is it a weird thing to even say that?
Yes, it is.
What is this, some type of trick candy camera?
I know, right?
That's the only thing I brought with me.
Those are legit IDs. I heard a lot also that black people can't figure out how to get to the DMV.
Really?
What does that say to you?
I know it's that, on 25th Street.
Do you know where the DMV is around you?
It's on 125th Street and 3rd Avenue, I believe.
You know how to get there?
Yeah.
Would you have a problem getting there if you had to get there?
No.
I know these sound like silly questions. You know how to get to the DMV?
Of course.
You know where it is?
Yes.
You can get there?
Uh-huh.
No problem.
No problem.
Just checking.
Okay.
And I also heard a lot that black people, especially poor black people, have no access to the internet, can't figure out how to use the internet.
That's just stupidity, honestly. Everybody has access to the internet. Even a little kid could figure out how to work the internet.
I had access to the internet for years.
You know how to use it properly, right?
Exactly. I do it at work. So, of course, I know how to use it. My kids know how to use it. They all have iPads, iPods, whatever.
Your phone has data? Mm-hmm. You can access the internet
Unlimited.
Unlimited data.
Mm-hmm. I use my phone as a hotspot.
What does that say to you for the people who have this perception of black people?
They're pretty much ignorant. That's why my thought process on it.
I just think that's ignorant. Ignorant.
All right, guys, here's the reality. In America, you need an ID to do just about anything. You want to cash a check? You need an ID. You want to buy alcohol? You need an ID. You want to get on a plane? You need an ID. But let's just assume for a second that all of this truly does, as the left will say, disadvantages poor people and minorities. So if that were the case, then why aren't they outraged about government services? What do you mean? Think about this. Signing up for Medicare, SNAP, food stamps, public housing, all those things require proof of identity, a voter ID, the same thing. So let me get this straight. If you want food stamps, veterans benefits, Medicaid, you need an ID, housing benefits, which would be what poor and minority people, apparently, according to them, also need. But then when it comes to voting, you can't have it. This is such a burden to them to vote, but not to get all these other benefits. It doesn't pass the smell test. Their hypocrisy is astounding. The argument that voter ID laws disproportionately affect minorities simply just doesn't hold up to scrutiny. Every single government assistance program that millions and millions of Americans rely on requires an ID. They don't just hand you Medicare or housing benefits or SNAP benefits for food stamps and say, oh, tell us who you really are. Okay, that's good enough for me. Are Democrats also arguing that low-income Americans are incapable of getting these documents? Because it doesn't make sense that if they can secure the benefit, that it's unreasonable for them to have the ID, right? So here's the thing. States that have implemented voter IDs, like, say, Georgia, have worked with organizations in the past, like the NAACP, to ensure that eligible people can get an ID, and then in a lot of cases, it's actually free. So you can't use that argument anymore. The idea that these laws, as Sonny Hostin would argue, are meant to suppress people is both baseless and ridiculous at the same time. It adds integrity to our system. You have to actually wonder what their intent is. Maybe it's, oh, I don't know, this.
What do you have to sign up to vote? A driver's license?
No. You have to be a U.S. citizen. It's a felony.
But how do you prove it, though?
Oh, you have to trust in the people. If they lie, no, listen to me. If they lie...
I know it's a felony.
That's right. Did you hear her? You can't lie. That was her deterrent. You can't lie. So in other words, we're trying to coax you all just to sign up here. But according to that woman, you just can't lie, but we'll just take your signature and that's all we really need. You don't need anything to prove you're a citizen to vote, according to her. But we can't tell you to lie, but we wink, nod, know what you want you to do. If this was truly about disenfranchising people, the Democrats should be leading efforts to remove the voter ID requirement from all the government programs that I talked about. but they're not. They're not. Why? Because they know that voter IDs are necessary to prevent fraud and ensure accountability. Their opposition to a voter ID has absolutely nothing to do with protecting voters. It has everything to do with protecting their own political interests. Democrats benefit. They are the beneficiaries of this loose election law system where ballot harvesting, outdated voter rolls, and a lack of voter ID make it easier for them. By opposing voter ID, they're actively weakening our system. If they truly cared about democracy, they would support these measures to guarantee that only legal votes are cast. Instead, they perpetuate a completely false narrative of suppression to their base because they only want to maintain control. It's beyond voting, though, just to be clear. Elon Musk noted that the huge amount of fraud that we see is also a magnet for a lot of this stuff. How about this? Using, say, disaster money from FEMA to house illegals. Take a listen to Elon Musk.
Where you'll see the biggest outcry is from the Democrats who are, they don't want the waste and fraud to be turned off because it is a gigantic magnet to attract illegal immigrants and have them stay in the country. And I mean, you see some of the crazy stuff, like where money from FEMA, which is meant, FEMA is an agency that's meant to take care of Americans in distress. And a bunch of their money was being sent to pay for luxury hotels in New York for illegal immigrants. And that was happening even after the president was elected, even after he signed an executive order saying that needs to stop. So we actually made sure that money did stop going, because obviously it's outrageous that American taxpayer money is spent on luxury hotels for illegals. But you have to say, like, why was that being done? It was because the Democrats are trying to import voters, basically.
Yes. I agree.
Yeah. And that's also why there's no voter ID needed. In fact, in California and New York State, you're not allowed to show voter ID.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't that seem insane?
Insane.
Yeah.
I'd say that as a New Yorker. It's insane.
Yeah, insane.
And in some states, they don't even want to see the ID when they vote. Joe Rogan questioned that because, again, it made sense. Listen to Mr. Rogan here.
Another obvious portal, which is California and New York, won't even allow you to show your ID when you vote.
Yep.
There's only one reason why you would do that, because you want people voting that shouldn't be voting, and you want it to count because you want to win.
Yep.
Right?
And more we're seeing that they are literally importing voters and paying them with government money.
Yes.
With like the huge amounts of money when we have homeless veterans on the street.
FEMA
we have
funds.
Over 300,000 children are missing that have crossed our border that we have delivered to unknown sponsors.
Look, despite what the media and the left would have you believe, Americans actually overwhelmingly support voter IDs. Poll after poll after poll show that Americans are on the side of requiring a voter ID. In fact, in a recent Rasmussen poll, 75% of likely voters supported voter IDs. And that's in majorities across all parties, because Americans understand that election integrity is fundamental to democracy. Democrats' opposition to voter IDs is not about protecting voters. It's about maintaining a system that benefits them politically. If they truly cared about all this, they would support it, but they don't. And ask yourself why.
Gee, Brian, what do you want to do tonight?
The same thing we do every night, Pinky. Try to take over the world.
Well, if you enjoyed this content, make sure to like this video, subscribe, and click the notification bell to get more.